Tom Pelissero joining us on loan from the NFL Network. Explain the NFL memo that came out yesterday, Tom.
Well, Dan, the headline item is, of course, that the NFL is now telling clubs in no uncertain terms that if any game is canceled and cannot be made up within the regularly scheduled 18-game season, and it involves a outbreak among unvaccinated players, then the team that has the outbreak is going to forfeit. They are going to take a loss in terms of playoff seeding. They're also going to be responsible for reimbursing costs to the other team, paying their visiting team share pool, and potentially, depending if protocols were violated, subject to additional discipline. Last year, of course, there were a couple of significant outbreaks, one in Tennessee, one in Baltimore. The league ran probes on those, but at no point was a forfeit ever considered. You had some of the same ramifications. The players on neither team would get paid if a game were canceled. The NFL made a bunch of adjustments, moved some things around. They were able to play all 256 games in the 17-week season, but they also always held out the possibility they could use and add a week 18 to make up any games. In this memo, it makes very clear in bold-faced type, we do not anticipate adding a 19th week to the season, and even goes so far as to say that if a team is not ready to play when they are scheduled to play under the Constitution and bylaws, that is conduct detrimental, and the commissioner could take action against a club if they are not able to play a game, and specifically if it is because they had unvaccinated individuals who tested positive and caused an outbreak.
What role has the NFL Players Association played?
The NFL and the NFLPA have negotiated all the protocols to this point, including the fact that players on neither team would get paid. In terms of team discipline, in terms of the forfeit and the loss, those are league decisions that they make unilaterally, because that would not involve the players. So the players' compensation does not change. But in terms of all the protocols, the differences between vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals, mask wearing, the daily testing versus testing every 2 weeks, the significant travel restrictions, the NFLPA has jointly negotiating all of those. And in fact, the union sent a memo to all players yesterday that once again reiterated what is really the top line item in all of this, that the union, its medical experts say that you have tested vaccines that are effective, even though they have maintained that it's every player's individual choice and the league is not mandating it. It's a very strong message from the union and the league. There are upwards of 78% of players within the league that have at least one vaccine shot, and they are aiming to get as many people vaccinated as possible before we get to September.
Yeah, I wonder about, you talk about individual rights, and some of these players have brought this up. So what does a team do to accommodate, for the lack of a better word, somebody like DeAndre Hopkins or Cole Beasley who says, I don't want to get vaccinated, but I still want to play?
Well, they're allowed to do that because the vaccine is not mandated for the players. But every team is going to be individually having to sort out how they're arranging their locker room. We've seen in other sports, whether it's the Yankees outbreak among vaccinated individuals, whether it's Olympic athletes, you've got vaccinated people who are testing positive, and they're being pulled out of competition. Now, the NFL memo also yesterday made reference to the fact that vaccinated individuals potentially can return to play sooner. They only need to have two. If they're asymptomatic, they would need to have two negative tests 24 hours apart, and then they can return. There's no mandatory 10-day waiting period. But of course, if you test positive and it's a real positive, you're probably going to test positive for a while. But still, I've talked to medical officials with teams who have, I wouldn't call them concerns, but certainly questions about, as you see the Delta variant, as you see other variants of this virus, as you see case numbers double around the country every couple of weeks right now. The place we're in late July, is that going to be significantly better than where we might be in September if the case numbers continue to rise? And if so, do you roll back those restrictions? Because I can tell you this, Dan, when you talk about, I've talked to many, whether it's players, coaches, agents for players, front office people, there's a lot of people who had some level of hesitancy and did not want to take the vaccine. And in a lot of cases, people ended up getting it because they don't want their lives to be like last year. They want to be able to get back to living like normal. In the cases of coaches, and front office people, they can't even be around the team, really. There's major restrictions unless you get an exemption if you do not get vaccinated. So now all of a sudden, if the league comes back and says, actually, you are going to have masks. Actually, we are still going to have separated travel. Actually, the sauna is going to close again. That would be a really hard sell. And so the NFL, for the moment, is just continuing to emphasize what they did yesterday, which is just, here's all the reasons, again, that it is going to be in the best interest of you, your team, and the league if you get vaccinated.
I'm federally mandated to ask you about Aaron Rodgers, if you think he'll show up. What's the end game here?
The one thing that I've heard consistently, Dan, from people who know Aaron Rodgers is everyone believes that he has and has had a plan, and that he has not communicated that plan to the powers that be. The Packers have not been told anything about whether or not he is going to show up. There are certain levers that he potentially could pull between he could show up on time, he could decide to hold out 5 days into camp, eat $250,000 in fines, and then show up day 6 before they can go after his bonus money. He could choose to temporarily retire. He could choose to pull what is sometimes called a hold-in, where you show up but basically don't practice. But this collective bargaining agreement looks upon that a little bit more harshly in terms of there's a material failure to perform your duties, then there's additional discipline that can come into play. So, you still have a lot of moving parts. The Packers have made clear publicly and privately for months that they are not trading Aaron Rodgers. I am not under the impression, based upon what I know, that has changed at all. Now, is there any chance that it would change if you got into mid-August or September or October or toward the trade deadline and Aaron Rodgers is still not there? That's hypothetical as of now, but the Packers absolutely want Aaron Rodgers back. They've stood at the ready, whether it's the contract that we reported back in March and April that they had tried to negotiate and that they had not been able to strike a deal, whether it's other potential changes within the organization. They're basically saying, tell us what you need to make this work. And to this point, Aaron Rodgers hasn't really done that.
I know you had a busy morning. Thank you for making some time for us, Tom. Thank you, and have a great weekend.
Anytime, Dan. You too.
That's Tom Pelissero, NFL Network reporter.